Hey folks, how's it going today? Another quiet morning. I think it's about 11 o'clock in the morning right now. I think I've got a bit more control than yesterday. I won't be laughing as much about the memories, and no more laughing about questions or anything like that. But the questioning was the origin of the irritation tactics. In fact, I was talking with my brother yesterday, and he had more memories about those times, and he did remember that we went out and we practiced some of these irritation tactics. In particular, there was something about in the theater that he had memories of, a technique of blocking somebody going by moving, like you're sitting at your chair like this, and you say the person's coming this way, and you say, oh yes, and you go like this to try to let them go by, but in fact what you're doing is you're taking out this knee way more than it was, and you're making it a lot harder for them to get by. So there you go, see? Irritation, just little tactics, and that person certainly won't get upset at somebody in the theater, they don't even know you. You wouldn't be blocking them on purpose. Look at all the movement you're doing. Anyway, so Cam had gotten me the job working at the Keg Restaurant, to get back to that thing there. I had no experience in food. It's just to be plain about this. In fact, I had no interest in food. I've had issues about food. Everybody riles me about it. Don't eat very much of this and that, and real picky. And working in a restaurant with meat in particular, I had this issue with meat, and I didn't want to eat red meat in particular. And in the kitchen, you work with red meat. You cut it, you chop it, you're handling it all the time. And anyway, it's ridiculous putting me in there. I didn't eat anything. I didn't taste any of the food I made. I was complimented for years about this onion soup I made there, and I had never tasted it. Never tasted it. I had no idea what it tasted. Just followed the recipe. Just ridiculous. Working in a kitchen in the Keg Restaurant. But anyways, that's where I ended up. And there was somehow I remember my roommate Derek had gotten a job there too as a cleaner. And that's where I remember pulling some stunts on him at points. I'm supposed to be working. I'm supposed to be in the kitchen, but yet I'm in some cove in the dining area, and it's closed. And Derek is vacuuming. He's got the vacuum. He's got the vacuum quite far away. And shit, there I go. I had promised you I wasn't going to laugh, but he's way over there, and I'm at the plug of his vacuum cleaner, and I just unplug it. So it dies. Then he doesn't think of the plug. He thinks of the vacuum. So he comes back towards the vacuum. He's walking towards the vacuum, but plug it back in. So that it starts up again, and he doesn't have to walk towards it. That's ridiculous. Ridiculous. I'm laughing already. Oh, God. So he'd be doing this dance, going back and forth from the vacuum away, and it would die again. He'd go back, and he'd come back, and he'd go back. Until eventually, I started getting... I left it off. It wouldn't start when he got to it. And he clicks it on, he clicks it off, he clicks it on again, and I start. So he figures it's the switch. There's something wrong with the switch, right? So he goes back and he's doing his thing. Oh, God. The tortures I put that guy through. So he's working on things, and I kill it again, and he goes back and he starts clicking that switch. And that's that time when the girl working in the restaurant, she starts screaming at me, Matthew Chandler, you get back to your job. Well, you see, we've got the train here in the background, just making sure that nothing I say gets heard. Sounds like it's stopping. The engine is dying. Okay, so we'll have some time here to talk. So, Good. The train is slowed down. The engine's died, so maybe we won't have any noises disturbing us for a while here. So she goes, "You get back to the kitchen and you stop bothering that guy." And yeah, he looks up, realize, and I run away from that spot, the plug. I did another little stunt on him at another point where he had these headphones on, and I could sneak up to him, which I did. And I went to his vacuum, and the vacuum had this really long hose, long hose. You could get all over the place without having to move the vacuum too much. And I just disconnected the hose from the vacuum, and he's over there doing his thing, and he kept going, and I know what would happen. He'd keep going, and you'd be seeing the vacuum would be here and it'd be way over there, and they're trailing this hose on the ground, and then he'd be coming to something, a cigarette or something like that on the ground, and he's trying to roll it and pick it up with the vacuum, and it doesn't pick up. And he looks at the section, he turns around, and the vacuum's way the frig over there. Anyway, just ridiculous, the stunts I pulled on that guy. Anyway, so I remember that stuff at the beginning, there's all sorts of little memories about somebody at one point had written on the electric panel on a switch that was unexplained. It was just sitting there. Somebody had written Matt's brain. And I knew it was there. I hadn't bothered erasing it. I just thought it was sort of funny. But just a series of coincidences. One day, I happened to be walking down the hall. The panel's right there. And right at the panel is the manager, the general manager, and somebody who's from regional or something like that, and they're all standing at the electrical panel, and they're trying to identify each switch, I guess. And I know where they are. They're at the switch that says Matt's brain, and they're looking at it, and the general manager's got her hand on the switch, and I just had time to say, "No, don't!" And as I was walking closer, and she goes, click, and by that time I'm right next to them, and I just collapsed on the ground as if they had just turned off my brain. The timing was rather perfect. Anyway, so another silly little thing. There's another story. There's so many stories, but I'll give you another one. This is just the kitchen was always a question of timing, and you had to calculate all sorts of stuff, and you had to attend to several things at the same time. So if you could delegate a job, leave it sitting there. For example, you could boil some water on the thing and do some boiling at the stove while you're in the kitchen at the back doing some chopping some vegetables or something. And that's what I had done. I had decided to melt some butter. And the butter, they came in these 50-pound blocks. Here we go again with the train. But they had these 50-pound blocks that you could crack with a hot knife into quarter pieces. And a quarter piece, about this big, would fit right into one of the pans, the stainless steel pans. And literally just fit in there, and I'd put it on the stove. Good, the train's gone, so I can continue with my story. So I put the butter on the stove, and went back into the kitchen, and I'm just working away, and something happens, doing this, doing that. I'm just chopping away, and suddenly it just hits me, the butter, and I run to the stove, and the stoves are these gas-fired stoves. There's propane gas underneath it, or natural gas or something. And you don't want butter near that, I'll tell you that. So I run out there, and the butter's all melted, and it's bubbling merrily. And bubbling is just it's just bubbling. So it looks like it's just about to drip over the edge and down the cracks into the flames underneath. So I'm, oh my God, and I grab the pan and I pull it off, and I'm, thank God. And I don't think about it anymore, you know. Everything's fine. I go back to the kitchen and I continue with my work. The cook comes in and he goes out to start the fire at the charcoal and at the grill, and the ovens are right next to the grill. And he comes back to me and he says, "Hey, Matt," he says, "I think we've got a fire." And I go with him, and he brings me to the stove, and we look underneath, and underneath there's a pan which grabs whatever drips down, like melted butter, for example, underneath. And this pan was filled with melted butter, and it's all burning, all of it. But there's these fans are on at the back, and there's these plates over it, these big cast iron tops, there's no flame apparent at all, right? It's all underneath. If you just look underneath the crack, you can see that, you know, it's burning merrily under there, you know. And so we're sitting there, we're trying to figure out how are we going to put this out, you know. And we're sitting there, you know, looking at it, and I figure, oh, maybe we could use a fire extinguisher. Just go in there and just spray. And so I go get a fire extinguisher, and that was the ABC. It was the C, which is a powder. I just go in and I go like that, and this powder just shoots out, and it takes this butter, this burning butter, and it throws it behind the stove onto the wall behind it, where it continues burning. So we had just put away I put down the fire extinguisher. It was at our feet over there, and I get the fire's right there, and I turn around and I see the general manager going by, and she's got these firemen. And she has no idea what's going on, right? And she's walking by, she's like, I don't know, you know, maybe over there, the charcoal room's over there. She's pointing away at the back over there. And because while all this butter had been burning, it'd been throwing up these palls of black smoke, palls of it. But the fans were very effective, and they were pulling it all and throwing it up over the restaurant. So over the restaurant, there was these huge balls of smoke, and somebody had called the firemen, and these guys had come to see what was going on. And so they go to the charcoal room, and by the time they come back, the fire had burnt itself out. The fire extinguisher was nowhere to be seen, and we never explained it. We never said what was going on. She never understood it, and the balls of smoke were gone. So, but there were damages left. You know, some metal in there got busted, some pipes, and some guy had to come in and fix the stove later on because there was this constant flame in there. Anyway, so that's one of my little things that went on there. But all of this is to lead me to working with Eric, because we're talking about irritation tactics here, and there I was just learning how to do the job, and you know, that was fine. But when Eric started working there, Eric was he came from Quebec, and he was a big guy, big chest, you know, big sort of stomach, and just sort of blubbery and big fat lips, you know, and sort of big jowls, not exactly fat, but just big. And he had this habit. It was just so terribly annoying. You know, he would laugh with his tongue halfway between his lips. I'm going to give you an example here. You know, you know, so he goes like this. It just drove me nuts. You know, what was wrong with him? He just had this way of annoying you. It was just, and I was obliged to work with the guy. You know, every day I would come in, and he'd just be brutal, you know, like these lines that he would come up with, these statements, these talks, the stuff he would babble about. It was just like, you're endlessly wishing for the day to end, like just constantly wanting the day to end. And then one day, I had objected to something he said. I don't remember what it was. But his technique that day was just to say why. He goes, Matt, why, Matt? Why, Matt? And I had to escape. I had to leave. I had to get away. I had to get away from this guy. I was going to kill him. So I ran to the closest place I could think, which was a walk-in freezer. And the walk-in freezer will cool you down all right, but not necessarily in the right way. And I'm literally, and there's nowhere to go once you're in there. Where am I going to go? I got to go back in the kitchen, and he's there. So, but he follows me in there, and he's standing in in that freezer, and he's going, "Why, Matt? Why? And I'm standing here, my hand. I remember my hand was like this, and I'm facing away. He's behind me, with his eternal barrage of whys coming after me, and I'm standing there, like. And then it hits me, just, oh my God, he's doing it on purpose. There's no way somebody can be that dumb as not to realize that he's bugging you this bad. And then everything changed, right? Because all of a sudden I realized that this guy was doing it on purpose. And I started watching him and seeing the ploys, the tricks he was using, how he was getting up to these attempts to irritate me. And eventually I started laughing about it, and we started to get along. And I realized that the only way to deal with this guy was to actually join him, to be just as irritating as he was, but for both of us to work as a team against a mosquito here. And there it is. To try to stay away from getting at each other and going after everybody else in the place. And there's some, techniques that were developed in there that ended up in me writing this book on how to irritate people. But there are memorable moments, and just to examine one, and this one was, rather unintentional, I guess. But well, he liked the Star Trek movies, and the original ones with William Shatner. And the first one, the motion picture, was pretty bad, but The Wrath of Khan was a really good movie. Both of us liked it. And I'd happened to have recorded it on a cassette tape. Not a movie, just a soundtrack, really. The people, the actors talking, and the music background and all that. But we'd both seen it several times. So as a result, we didn't need to see it. You could just listen to the soundtrack and you could see it in your head. And we'd be chopping away and doing our stuff and listening to the soundtrack. And... time would pass. It would be good. And, you'd play the one side of the track and then you'd flip it over, listen to the end, and then fast forward it, and then flip it back and start listening to it again. And you could listen to it like maybe 6 times a day. And at that point, we had this kitchen manager who, some guy, I don't remember his name. I don't have a clue what his name was. He had a mustache, I remember that, and he had come in, anyways. We were listening to this thing. It's probably been about 2 weeks. We'd been listening to The Wrath of Khan every single day, about 6-7 times a day, constantly repeating. Over and over and over and over and over, which is the hallmark of irritation, is repetition, right? If you can just repeat something long enough, it becomes darn irritating. So that was but we really weren't trying to irritate anybody. We were just enjoying The Wrath of Khan, and to us it was fine. It wasn't irritating us. But we didn't realize that the kitchen manager and the general manager, they're all sitting in the office, which is right there off the kitchen, and we'd blast that radio. So they were listening to The Wrath of Khan too. After 2 weeks. one morning he walks in, the kitchen manager, we'll call him Robert for whatever reason, and he walks in and he's got a mug on him, he's just going nuts, and he comes in and he goes by and he walks into the office and he slams the door, boom, the door resounds, with a slam. And just as quickly as it's slammed, it reopens, and swiftly, whoosh, and he comes back out, and he's determined, right? And he points his hand, and he goes, "You will not play the Wrath of Khan today." And he goes back in and he slams the door again, and Eric, just being Eric, he just had, at that point, he had puffed himself all, "Oh, he can't tell me what to listen to in my kitchen," and he says, "Wait till you see what I bring in tomorrow." And he had brought in some punk rock record of some sort of tape that he made, and it was just god awful. Anyway, so such was the daily life of us in that kitchen, developing these irritation tactics, unconsciously, really, but. Another one that's worthy of mention, there's several of them, but we had a fellow that worked as a cook. And he just happened to be somewhat short. And I've got nothing against short people. I'm not tall myself, but he was just something to pick on. As anything that was pickable, we would use. But this guy, every day, one of us would have some type of comment that related to height. You could double entendres and whatever it is we came up with. But there was one day where we had done something that was just above everything else. And what it was is there was this bar on which there was all these kitchen tools, these cook tools, salad tongs and all sorts of things. They were all put on this bar. And the bar was in the middle of the table, and normally you could reach it, but he wasn't tall enough exactly to reach it. And normally he would stand on the bottom shelf of the table and lift himself up, and he could just reach the bottom of the tongs and take off the ones he needed. So one day Eric came up with this idea to lift up the bar about 2 inches. It's just a couple of inches. That's all we needed, because we already knew that he could just barely reach the tongs. So he just raised it up a couple of inches, and he walks in, and sure enough, he gets up on the thing, and he goes like this in his hand. His hand goes like this, and he can't reach the tongs. Anyway, I'm going to stop the story right now. I guess that's going to be it for this session of my irritation tactic history. And I guess in the next one, we're going to talk about the book proper, and maybe start looking at some of the tactics and how they developed, and how to use them effectively. Anyway, we'll see you at the next session. Talk to you soon.